What is going on, Tenta Crew, and welcome to the final job guide for the demo of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, going through the Mage and Black Mage archetype. And if you ever had the inkling, the urge, the so-called want to make a Gobo do this, well, I think the Black Mage might just be for you. So let's get into it, guys. Starting off, what is a mage or black mage? Mage archetypes are very common within the Final Fantasy realm. Typically, they come in the form of red, black, white, blue, green. There's a bunch of different types of mages, but as far as what we have in Stranger of Paradise, we start off with a standard mage, which doesn't hold any similarities to any other mage type besides black mage. It's all offensive magic based stuff. So basically, this is baby black mage, and then you evolve into full-on black mage later. But what makes a mage in Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin? Well, the weapons of choice for the mage are a club and a shield. The shield is the only offhand weapon that we get access to in this game. It doesn't really have any better base function other than providing a better block than what a weapon would. It will reduce your stagger bar loss significantly. They also come with different benefits and add-ons that you can get. I've yet to find one that has any affinity to it, but that could just be me. But as you can see, you barely take any posture damage whenever you're blocking with the shield, which is very important because with the black mage, it is by far the squishiest of the classes in the game. You are not going to get a lot of health with this class, and you are also not super adept when it comes to melee combat. This club, while it is decent, does not do a significant amount of damage. It tends to do more posture damage than anything, and it is also extremely short range. So the shield is an almost necessity for a class of this type, and instead of doing a lot of parrying, I would suggest actually blocking a significant more than you would typically with any of the other classes, just because there's really no downside to blocking with the black mage, and it can kind of help you like slow push onto an enemy, maybe get a little bit of action going closer, and then you can actually make use of that mace in the close range. So very good in that regard, but very bad if you actually take on the chin hits. So what else is there with the black mage? Well, starting off, every class has its R2 ability, and the black mage's is the most interesting. It is spell. So with this, you have a little bit of a spell wheel. You have fire, ice, thunder, water, quake, and air. So a bunch of different elements. There is elemental affinity in this game from what I could tell. So say using fire on undead enemies or water on bombs, that kind of stuff will have an impact, so keep that in mind. They also function significantly differently than each other. Whereas say a Firaga spell is going to be a straight AoE that goes forward and then does a big explosy boy. Blizzarga is going to be more of an on-the-site massive AoE.
Time to go to work.
Same thing with Thundara. It will make an AoE on the ground and then light up that area. Watara is, or Waturga. That's a weird one. Very much similar, but it has a knock-up effect to it. So if you're wanting to send enemies flying, that is a good one. Quakeaga or Quagga. What the fuck are these names anymore? Makes an AoE around you. And then last but not least, Eroga sends out a massive tornado that will suck up enemies into it and bounce them off of any surface. It does very little damage, but it is amazing if you're in like a tight hallway or something and you want to posture break a group of enemies very easily. It is the one I would recommend for that. Let me show you what it does specifically, because I feel like it's the most interesting and nuanced of the spells that you get.
I don't stand a chance.
and away it goes. And as you can see, boom, both posture broke instantly just because the Aroga ran them into
It was good practice.
the pillar. Follow that up with this guy. I want to show you that knock-up. It's just a little bit of a knock-up, not a significant amount, but it is enough to ground an enemy and also give you the opportunity to close a gap. As you can see, my health just from that attack alone is down significantly just because of the nature of the Black Mage. But what else does Black Mage bring to the table aside from that? Well, it has its standard combo moves. It has an R1 that you can charge up to 3 times, get hyper armor while you're doing it. It's very similar to what the Greatsword's charged R1 is, just a lot shorter range. It also does not have any of the directional functionality that the Lance did, so you're not going to be getting any like side sweeps or long thrusts or anything like that. It's all just standard R1 combos with R2s mixed in. And what are those R2s? Well, the standard R2 you start with is R1, R2, which is Cascade. Nice little move, travels you forward a bit, does a little bit more damage than what a standard R1 chain would, but it's not super amazing. Bring that into the next ability, which is Fiery Impact. And the cool thing about the Black Mage and the Mage archetype in this game is you don't necessarily need to sit, hold, and cast a spell for you to actually get elemental effects. So if you know that an enemy you're going up to has fire weakness, for instance, you can do this move and exploit that. So R1, R2, it's just a big fire burst in front of you. Does moderate damage to enemies that don't have the fire affinity, and does big damage to enemies that do. Next is R1, R1, R2, which is an ice move. This is my personal favorite. It does the ice damage straight up, and then it does a massive uppercut that sends enemies flying. Very good for knocking people into walls if you are wanting to posture break off of that. It is by far, I think, the most generally useful ability out of the kits if you're not going specifically for an elemental affinity. And then lastly, you have Thunder, which this one's a little bit interesting. I don't know the practical use for it. 1, 2, 3. You do a hit, and then it shocks after that. So you kind of throw out the lightning. It hits the enemy that you're wanting it to hit, and then it sends down a lightning strike from that location. I feel like the ice is more useful in most common situations, but the lightning does get the edge as far as having a bit more range than the other moves do.
Come on, follow me.
Because they can actually get out there in pretty decent ways. If you're whiffing attacks, you can actually send that out and hit people as they're coming up towards you. It's very neat. And as with all of these abilities, they all take 100 mana to use, especially Spark Strike. So this is the first one where we get an R1, 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 R2 that does not cost 200 mana. So each of these can be used interchangeably to get elemental effects going when you don't want to sit back and charge a spell. Because sitting back and charging a spell, unless you have Lightbringer mode on or something that can keep you from getting staggered, you can get knocked out of that very, very easily. As you can see, my health is by far the lowest out of any of the classes. If I go over to Warrior, we're up to 1600 there. We're only at 1100 with the Mage. So going into the job tree straight up, Mage has cast. You can do spells. All the cast spells that you have saw that I did all cost the same amount of mana no matter what level they are. It's basically, do you want to risk charging the spell up longer to get a bigger effect and potentially get knocked out of it? Or do you just want to like quick cast? They will all do the same amount of mana. It's just going to be more damage. And on the tier 3s, they all have special secondary effects. Like the water does the knock up. The fire does like the explosion on sight. The arrow goes a lot further and a lot longer. It's very, very good. Fiery Impact, as you saw, was the R1, R2 that you unlock. And then you also have Ruin. Ruin is in the same family as the buff spells, but it is actually not a buff spell. It is unique in that regard. Do I have it equipped? I do not. Let's go ahead and throw Ruin on there. So Ruin is just a neutral net damage, no like elemental affinity spell. So if you cast it, It just sends out a nice little orb of light forward. Does some knockback damage. Let me go ahead and get my mana up, and I will show you exactly what this does to an enemy. So if you're not wanting to wait for a cast time, if you're not wanting to do any of the R1 moves, you can do this. Huzzah! And it does a nice little knock-up. Very minimal as far as damage goes, but it does have the posture damage to boot. You can send people flying into walls if you're wanting to really get that posture going. It's basically a good, hey, get the fuck off of me card. If somebody's right in front of you, it will just push them back immediately. It does not, once it hits an enemy, the travel time is done. It stops traveling at that point, but it is very good in that regard. It is also 100 mana to cast. Back into the job tree, we have Intellect, which is your magic damage stat, of course. More intellect on this side. Recover MP from normal attacks. Again, with the Mage and Black Mage, that mace is very, very short range, so it may be useful, maybe not. I mean, obviously it's better to have on than not, but I don't feel like you'll be doing a lot of meleeing in this form. I feel like you're going to have a secondary form that's more melee oriented. Honestly, you're going to be switching to Black Mage, cast a spell, do whatever element stuff you want, and then switch over to your melee class. That's just what I can foresee the playstyle being. I don't think this is a very good standalone playstyle, unless you really like the sword and board mentality, in which case, feel free. Going down the right side of the tree, Frost Swing, you saw how good that one was. And this is why the Mage is so squishy. As you can see, all of these stat boosts in this tree are all intellect. Every single one of them. There's no stamina, there's no health, nothing like that. It's all just strong, strong damage. And that is where this Mage class excels. It is a glass cannon, if you will. The glass cannon. It is very good at making sure enemies at the start of a fight are already at a disadvantage. It's one of the best lead-up classes to a fight that you can see. If you can see an enemy off in the distance and get a cast off before they notice you, fight immediately gets easier, especially if you switch off to something else that's more melee-oriented. And then over here, we got the last one, which is Spark Strike. Got abilities cost 10% less, always nice. We do have a little bit of Spirit over here, which is the magic resistance, but that's the only defense stat you're going to get. Finally, we have Focus, which I have not unlocked, but it, from what I understand, increases your maximum mana bar every time you cast a spell. And then we go to the Black Mage, which is the souped-up version of the Mage. Very similar stuff that you're seeing out of the tree, more intellect. This one increases your Lightbringer duration by 30%. You saw that in the Dragoon tree. With this, combined with this, it is ridiculously powerful. So 30% increased Lightbringer duration on top of Fast Cast. What does Fast Cast do? Whenever Lightbringer is activated, it basically halves the time that it takes for you to build up your magic. So let me show you this in action. So you go in here, you activate. Actually, let me show you. Let me do you one better, okay? So we are going to switch over to Black Mage real quick. And this is how long it takes to cast a regular Firaga spell. If we go into this, now this is how long it takes to cast a Firaga spell. You see the difference? It is actually nutty how quickly you can get a new spell up if you have Lightbringer mode on. And you can just sling these out there willy-nilly, no problem, no worry. Significantly less time. Plus, while you are in Lightbringer mode, you're also not going to be able to be staggered or anything like that. So it is just a very, very synergistic ability with this job tree. Going back over here real quick, we got a little bit more spirit. This one here is Seal of Blood, which is the buff ability. Increases the damage and break damage you deal on the next ability you cast. So you pop this, use your next ability. It's going to be a ridiculous amount of damage and break damage. It's very, very good. And it automatically finishes off enemies that are low health, so you don't have to run up and execute them. It'll automatically break them. pop them. Any enemies nearby will get knocked back or popped as well if they're low enough. Very, very good. A little bit of agility, which I feel like is a bit interesting with this tree. And then you have your elemental affinities, each one of these going for fire, ice, and lightning. I feel like they chose these ones because they're the ones that you can string into your R2 combos so that it kind of ups their damage, each one by 40%, by the way. And then overall magic damage by 5% there to cap off this tree. So as you can see, it is very damage oriented. They really want you to be using this to nuke enemies down from a distance. And that is where I think this class really shines. I think it shines as a very good support class. You can use it with either warrior or dragoon, depending on whatever playstyle you want as far as your melees go. But I think this is by far the best used as a secondary whenever you want to either lead into a fight, or if it's a single enemy that you know you can kite back from and really just hammer the magic home with. I think that's where it truly, truly shines. And as you know, with most of the upgrades like warrior from swordsman, there's always an odd thing new with your R2. This one still allows you to have full range of all the other black mage stuff, but it gives you a bonus, and that bonus is flare. It is an ability that you can only use if you've got a tier 3 charge going. It is over here. It is non-elemental magic damage.
Let's go.
And it is ridiculous. It takes a little while to charge up, but once it does, boy, do it go. The downside to flare is it costs 300 mana to use. That's a pretty hefty price tag, even for black mage, considering everything else only costs 1 mana to use. It might be a little too much to ask for, but the cool thing about flare is it does do massive AoE damage. So anything caught in this light stream is going to be nuked effectively. So if you can get a full room of enemies in front of you and then use a well-timed flare on them, you might not even need to fight that room. So it's kind of weighing the odds if flare would be the best option for you. In most like active battle situations, it probably will not be. But if you can get a good jump on somebody, it is devastating. Last thing I will say is, as far as the demo goes, Hermit Club is what you got. Kite Shield is also what you got. And then the armor sets of choice are the caster sets. I've got Pale Gloves on here just because I didn't get any good caster gloves. The Pale Gloves kind of were like the Jack of all trades, Master of none armor set for this demo. The caster set is pretty much what you are going to want to get on your black mage as far as the demo goes. I know we've only got a few days left on the demo, but I hope you guys have been enjoying these guys and hope you have been enjoying the demo. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. We'll be covering a lot more of this game once it gets closer to release and any more new content before it comes out. So definitely hit the like and follow the channel if you haven't already, and maybe check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Billy_the_Skwid. A lot of Final Fantasy stuff coming to that live stream recently, as well as some Soulsborne stuff if that is your cup of tea, which if you're playing this, I would like to think so. But anyway, much love, Tentacrew. Talk to you later.